Here's how to get rid of 99% of police and not have everything fall apart. I'm not kidding. So you already know the basics. Killing by U.S. police reached a record number last year, which is horrifying and means about 1 out of every 10 or 12 murders in America is done by police. Also, they brutalize and destroy the lives of millions more in other ways. Beating, arresting, escalating situations, not to mention just being a dick. Just being a dick. Plus the cost. The U.S. spends at least $759 million per day on police and prisons, $277 billion a year. So perhaps, call me nutty, it's time to have far fewer police in our country and take the billions we spend on them and put that money into other types of jobs to deal with societal situations. And then take whatever's left over and have a national pizza party, topless. Stay with me. Let's try something crazy. Let's look at what U.S. police actually do every day and see how many of their jobs can be replaced. And I'm not saying get rid of all police tomorrow and see what happens. You and I both know that would mean your neighbor with the handlebar mustache and the 24 pet parakeets would be dry humping the jungle gym at the park in no time if there wasn't some kind of community watch. But maybe we can get that number of actual armed U.S. police down from around 800,000 to around 60. 60 dudes. 60 roided up assholes. That's all. That's a reasonable number we could keep track of, know where they are at all times. And of those, at least half would be dressed as burlesque dancers, just to keep things festive. Now, you all know that most police time is spent standing around with their dicks in their hands and their thumbs up their asses. So first of all, we get rid of all that time. But even if you look beyond all that pointless time, most of what police do in America is bullshit. I'm going to show a chart that ignores all the standing around and only shows the incident reports cops file. So this is just what they respond to. The chart was created by criminologist Jerry Ratcliffe, who used 2015 data from Philadelphia, a city with relatively high crime rates. The area of each box represents the proportion of reported incidents within that category. The larger the box, the more incident reports. Okay, unfounded radio calls is the most filed report. Cops being called when they don't need to be. So that means either someone is calling them for a stupid reason. Hey, I need the police. My kid is not eating his cold McNuggets and I'm trying to teach the prick a lesson. Or it means people got spooked and called the cops. Send the popo. There's a pervert out in my tree. Or it could be a squirrel, but it's a perverted squirrel. Well, one of the reasons cops are called so much for nonsense is because we are socially engineered to believe cops are the solution to everything. People think idiots with guns will solve anything, from a raccoon in a garbage can to a neighbor who called you a twat bag. We could stop most, if not all, of these calls by changing the cultural understanding. Let's change it to police are not your daddy, all right? Don't call people with firearms unless you're in a goddamn war. Unless there's 15 Yakuza out front with throwing stars, don't call the cops. Next up, investigate premises. This is basically calling the cops because you're scared of the dark. Just come investigate. I don't know what's in there. Oh, come on. What are you, 5? Man up and investigate your fucking selves. And I don't like the term man up because most men I know are wimps. So woman up and get in there. But in all seriousness, we could have unarmed community watch groups who are paid well, trained well, care about their jobs, know how to deal with a lot of situations like mental illness, homelessness, struggling folks, but they wouldn't be killing anyone or destroying anyone's lives. And in fact, many cities are adopting programs that send EMTs and social workers to mental health 911 calls instead of police. This is a way of bringing care into the crisis, one social worker said. You see it in the moment. You say, wow, this is different, and you feel it. Now, in my version, these community watch folks would have big reflective vests and big lights and gesture hats with the bells on the end, so they wouldn't be sneaking up on anyone, because when people get surprised, they overreact. And when they overreact, they do stupid shit. But 99.99% of the time, the person in the dark trespassing somewhere is not the Zodiac killer with a human ear hanging out of his mouth. It's a homeless person looking for somewhere to sleep, or a drunk dude looking to take a dump, or two teenagers looking to bone. And any of those will scurry off when they see a brightly lit up group of jesters walking toward them. Problem solved. No cops needed. False burglary alarms. Same as the investigate premises crap. Send the community watch dressed like Santa's little helpers, and they'll be playing music too, like an ice cream truck. Cops not needed. Derelict vehicles. You don't need cops checking on a broken down hatchback. Sending armed dudes and ladies to face off against a car without a tire? That's like sending the Marines in because your dishwasher won't drain. We should be ashamed as a society that we ever thought we needed an army to handle an empty vehicle. Does it matter what kind of vehicle? What if it were a rickshaw with a broken wheel? Would you send the cops for that? How about a bicycle with no seat? What about a single abandoned rollerblade? Would the cops come, put a white chalk outline around the skate, dust for fingerprints, take DNA samples? So that one's gone too. Moving on. Request for information? That should be fielded by elderly librarians with a tube of hemorrhoid cream on the desk who actually have information. I mean, you're an idiot if you walk up to a guy with a firearm on his hip to ask where the kebab restaurant is. Hey, look, there's a man running down the street with a bloody hatchet. Let's query him as to where the best roadside froyo is. Don't go to the cops for information. You're out of your mind. All right, we've already eliminated nearly half of everything police do. We're making real progress here. Moving on, false fire alarms. Both false fire alarms and real fire alarms send firefighters. That's their job. We can have more of them. Are the armed maniacs with badges gonna shoot the fire to death? Cops not needed. So we can get rid of that one and the fire damage box on this chart as well. City business and lost property. Let's not use the savage, racist police state to handle putting the paper clips on the files at City Hall. And lost property should be tackled by a retiree with a lot of time on their hands to go through 900 bedazzled cell phone cases. And that lost property person should not have any kills on their record. Yeah, some of the time I spend looking for a scarf that someone has misplaced, and then other times I spend shooting an automatic rifle at a drug kingpin. Those are my two responsibilities. So cops not needed. Animals. Animals should be dealt with by animal professionals. You know what cops do when they enter a house? They shoot the dog. That's step one. So why would we have the same people who shoot all the dogs trying to cuddle a scared cat? Next up, complaints against police. Guess what? That's the number one thing that should not be handled by police. That's like the Fox being asked to investigate Fox complaints. Complaints against police should be dealt with by anyone other than police. Disorderly crowds. One word. Bouncers. Big nasty dudes with neck tattoos and stretch marks and hearts of gold. They'd be trained in de-escalation, and they wouldn't be armed. If they could stop a group of horny Chicago businessmen from touching the dancers at Midnight Delight, then they'll have no problem handling a bunch of drunk tailgaters at an Eagles game. No need to call the cops. Instead, call big dudes with thick beards and a body odor that has its own social security number. That'll do the trick. Next up, disputes, domestic disputes, and minor disturbances. So a lot of these could be dealt with a new cultural understanding that when you're dealing with a minor disturbance, you don't call men with guns. You call a different group of people, dispute mediators, who are actually trained at de-escalation and can help people as opposed to just break their skulls. You see how that works? That would take care of most of these calls. But there are a certain percentage, I grant you, of domestic disputes that are serious spousal abuse or elder abuse, etc. However, regular police don't generally stop long-term abuse. And if the problem moderators, if they come and they see a situation where someone needs help on that level, then they could call in whatever kind of arrest is appropriate. Cops not needed. Traffic accidents, traffic enforcement, a DUI. Call me crazy, but why in the hell are people with guns and tasers responding to speed limit violations or traffic accidents? Firefighters, EMTs, medics, tow truck drivers, even some kind of legal note taker. Sure, send them all in. But people with guns and the ability to send you to prison for life? No! And if we want speed limit enforcers in our society, then let's make that a special job. Speed limit people. They have a fast little cart with little funny lights on it, and they wouldn't have guns because that would be insane. Instead of guns, they'd have mints. Yes, mints. They'd give you a little chocolate mint to ease the pain of the ticket. And no one would shoot the speed limit mint givers because that's madness. That would be like shooting your mailman or a crossing guard. Not a single brand of traffic enforcement needs to be done by a police state. For those who refuse to stop, they'd take a picture of their license plate and it'd be handled at a higher level. But let's get all the armed madmen with the badges off the fucking roads. Wow, we're really doing great. Just imagine how many hundreds of thousands of police we've already eliminated and all the danger that removed from our society. Next up, truancy and curfew violations. We could have special truancy and curfew people as well. Maybe the same as the info people. I mean, they could do both jobs. But come on, any society that sends a steroidal beast with a gun to tell a 10-year-old he needs to show up to home ec isn't a civilized society. Cops not needed. Vandalism. You don't need cops to handle spray paint on a building any more than you need cops to go after rust on a building. How about bird poop on a building? Should you send the police in for that one? Vandalism can be solved by a good neighborhood watch who don't carry guns, mace, misplaced rage, and serious daddy issues. No cops needed. Moving on to judicial violations and city ordinances. Well, these can range from things like you can't dig near a water main to truly weird shit like in Los Angeles where you aren't allowed to have your dogs mating within 500 yards of a church. I say where better. Or Southington, Connecticut, where the use of silly string is banned at carnivals, parades, and public places. Now, I know I'm going out on a limb here, but I don't think police need to be involved in stopping someone from digging near a water main, spraying silly string, or dogs doing the doggy style outside a house of God. No, unarmed city facilitators should handle all that stuff if we even need those laws. We don't. They don't need to be called city facilitators, by the way. They can be whatever. They can be called happiness enforcers, the silly string patrol, the cocker spaniel cock blockers, whatever you want. But they wouldn't be trained to kill. Cops not needed. Well, look how much horrible policing we've already eliminated. Medical assistance should be done by EMTs and medics. Next, vices, like smoking in a no-smoking zone or drinking on a sidewalk or prostitution. First of all, most of those shouldn't be against the law. But secondly, I think the town's vigilante smoker could be brought to heel by our new unarmed city patrol. Maybe they could even have a little squirt gun so they could spray the end of the offending Marlboro. Prostitution could also be stopped with a squirt gun, I think. Cops not needed. Next up, simple assaults and harassment. Mixture of bouncers, social workers, and a headmaster to slap a guy's hand with a ruler and go, "That waitress didn't give you permission to call her sweet tits." Moving on, trespass, theft, burglary, robbery, weapons violations, and vehicle crime. I put these together because they're all similar with similar solutions. For one thing, a lot of these crimes could be solved by decreasing inequality and ending extreme poverty in this country, but we'll save those type of solutions for another time. But here's a dirty little secret of our police. Most theft, burglary, robbery, and vehicle crime is never solved. Most people who do those things are not dumb enough to hang around until the cops show up. And if they're gone, I got news for you. The police are not dusting for fingerprints and taking saliva samples to find out who broke your car window and stole your gym bag full of old socks and crusty underwear. If it's a larger crime, like a legit carjacking, well, they'll start monitoring tolls maybe and road cameras for a certain license plate, but that can be done in an office by an investigator, a detective that yet again does not need to be a gun-toting street warrior. It can be a nerd with a computer and an itchy trigger finger clicking a ballpoint pen. Now, some of you may respond, what if there are gangs of armed madmen stealing cars and assaulting people for sport and giving wedgies to suburban dads? Yes, there could be extreme situations where some kind of armed police presence is needed, such as an ongoing mass shooting or something like that. And that type of SWAT team could still exist for rare extreme moments. I'm sure even in Iceland, where there's been only one murder by police since the independence of that country 80 years ago, they probably still have the ability to deal with an armed maniac should it ever arise. But those armed police would be used very rarely and only when there's no other option. Basically the opposite of our current system, which is Use armed police to do every different job that exists on the planet. From kicking people off of public benches to telling someone they can't drop their candy bar wrapper on the sidewalk. Drugs. I know this is an edgy line, but drugs should be a fucking health issue, all right? Not a crime issue. Portugal decriminalized drugs and has one of the best records in Europe. Plus, the biggest drug dealers in the world are Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and Novartis, and they aren't getting arrested for a goddamn thing. So check this out. We've gotten rid of 95% of all police. All we're left with is missing persons, child endangerment, sex offenses, rape, arson, fraud, embezzlement, and homicide, which amount to only a tiny number of police reports. But even those truly gnarly crimes, right, the worst of the worst, don't really need the number of cops we use for them. Most of the work with a murder, rape, arson, or fraud is done by the nerdy cops in an office making phone calls and looking over financial records and licking bloody bed sheets and going, tastes like Steve did it. It's not done by the brutish dummies you see on the street, the wannabe MMA fighters. So why don't we stop calling the office nerds police? It's a different job, really. We'll take away their guns and we'll call them desk detectives. Then the only moment you'd need people with weapons is during an actual arrest of a murder or rape suspect, which is very rare. So we could keep a few police around for that kind of thing, but not many, just a few per city. So we did it. We got rid of 99% of all police, and we did it without collapsing society. Think of all the harm, brutality, and toxic destruction we just removed from our entire country. Well done, folks. I'm really impressed with you. Now go out there and make it a reality. I suppose that's the harder part. But you got to start with the ideas before you can make a better world. And we got to realize abolishing most police is not radical. It's actually civilized. Imagine one day having a real civilization. That's it, folks. That's the most censored news for this week. A new episode comes out every week. Make sure you click subscribe. But also, I hope you will support us because we are completely independently funded. Just go to patreon.com/behindtheheadlines and keep fighting.